Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Brandy, and what I do is I bring you some dark history stories that have to do with witches and werewolves and vampires and poisoners and all kinds of people. And today we're talking about a traveling mystic healer that served the Russian royals. Yeah, he started out as a peasant and then he made his way to the top. And who are we talking about? Grigori Rasputin today. Okay, and so there are some fact and there is some fiction that has been mixed up with this man, and we're going to decipher between the both. And while I do that, I'm going to put makeup on my face, and we'll tell the story and it'll be fun. So if that sounds awesome to you, please hit that subscribe button as I'm trying to grow. And yeah, let's go ahead and get this party started about Rasputin. So Rasputin was born on January 21st, 1869. And he was born into a very, very peasant family. They had no money. They were very, very, very much so poor. He had no education, unfortunately. He was just poor. I mean, he was a peasant in a peasant family. His dad was a farmer, but he was also he was in the church. His dad was, and so you got to kind of keep that in mind as we talk about Rasputin, because he kind of goes on to help be a healer and a faith healer and a spiritualist and all these other kind of things. But his dad was also in the church, so I can see where he gets it from. And he also had a mother named Anna. Now, he had some brothers and some sisters, but the family actually had 9 kids. Only 2 of them lived, though. That's what's so sad about this. Only 2 of the children lived, and one of those children was Rasputin, okay? The name Rasputin actually means where 2 rivers meet. They used to say it was something derogatory, but that's not actually what it means. It means where 2 rivers meet, which is actually kind of beautiful, And so anyway, they had all these children, but all of them died except for Rasputin and then this one other girl. We don't know much about this man's early life, unfortunately. We do know that he was kind of a ruffian, slightly, because in his teenage younger years he got in trouble a few times. But I mean, who in their teenage years doesn't get in trouble a few times for doing some stupid stuff? He was probably stealing so that he could eat. I mean, it could have been stuff like that. But later on, they try to say that he stole horses and that he was just like this massive drunk who abused women and all this stuff. And like I say, we're gonna chop up fact from fiction during this, because there's a lot of things that are not true in this situation. There's no evidence he ever did blasphemy or bear false witness, like they would try to say, later on. He didn't do any of that. He just did normal ruffian type, teenager-y stuff, basically. But by the time he's 19 and it's 1886, he's like, I'm going to get married. He meets a chick. She's also a peasant girl, and they court each other for several months before they decide to go on ahead and tie the knot. They marry in February of 1887, and they have 3 children, and only one survived to adulthood, okay? Her name is Maria. So his wife would stay behind and support the house and things of that matter. She would stay behind while her husband, Rasputin, would go from country to country, basically like a traveling, he wanted to be a healer. He got a calling, okay? We don't know. Some people say he saw the Virgin Mary of God, Virgin Mary. Some people say that he just had an epiphany and he just wanted to go and see what spirituality was like. So he goes and starts to visit monasteries. He goes on pilgrimages and starts visiting these monasteries and things like that. And he meets a man that actually helps him learn how to read and write. So he gets a lot of good vibes from this place that he goes to. And the man that helped him to read and write, his name was Makari. And he was an elder. And this was a huge, in 1897, this was a huge transformation for Rasputin. Okay, he had met this elder. This elder's like, hey, I'm going to help you figure out what you need to do You know, I'm going to teach you how to read. I'm going to teach you all the things that you need to know about spirituality and religion and all this other kind of things. Now, Rasputin, you know, was kind of wanting to be a monk, but after being, the monastery was great, but he said that some of the monks there would perform, they would couple up, and he wasn't down with that, you know, because this was a monastery. It was just monks, and so that did not appeal to him. So after he learned to like read and write with this elder, he kind of pieced out and was like, hey, I'm going to be a traveling spiritualist guy. Like, I'm going to be a guru. I'm going to go around. I'm going to help people. And his wife would stay at home and take care of their child while he would be out and about in the world gathering followers, saying things, talking. And most of his followers would be women, okay? Keep that in mind as well. So at 28 years old, he comes out of this monastery and he is like, I'm going to be a vegetarian. I'm not going to drink any alcohol. I am not going to, you know, I'm not going to do anything that would, you know, make me look bad in the eyes of God. I'm going to pray more. I'm going to sing more. I'm going to do all these things. He looked really kind of bad, like disheveled and things, as you can see in pictures, but he behaved differently. His behavior wasn't the same as it was. And so he got this name. It's like being a mystic, and he had a small following of people. He did. And they would pray. So he gets this small following, okay? And he's staying with his dad, and so they decide to build a chapel in the root cellar of the house, of his dad's house. And this is where Rasputin and his followers, mostly women, would come and they would listen to him speak down in this root cellar in this makeshift chapel. Now, some people would say that these women, that they were engaging in like multiple acts of love, I guess. That's the best way for me to put it. But that's not 100% proven. I don't feel like that he was that way, because he had a wife and he had a child he was very dedicated to, because he always would go home to them, you know. No matter how long he stayed away, he always went home for a little while so that he could see his family. So anyway, they'd hold these secret prayer meetings in the basement, okay? And people were not happy about this in the town. No, they were like, and of course other church rulers, they were not happy about this whatsoever. They were like, this is not cool. This man should not be doing this. You know, this is not a cool thing. This is our congregation, you know, getting all feisty and everything. But the rumors, like I say, they would follow him. They would. The rumors would follow him for a really long time. People thought that he was getting it on with all of his followers, you know, even though he had male followers too. But they all thought he was, you know, getting it on with everybody, even though he wasn't. He had changed his life, you know, and he was going to be a spiritual guru man that was basically a wanderer. A guy that just wandered and helped people who needed help. That's what he was going to be. So people tried to say that he was in the Kabbalisti, which is a religious sect that did like self-flagellation. You know, like they hit themselves like for their sins that they've done, and they also like would participate in these orgies and things like that. But that's also not proven. Rasputin is not one of those people. He was not. Those rumors were unfounded. So he began to rise up a little bit because of his activities and his charisma with this group. It really started to hit, the word of Rasputin was starting to really get out there. And people really liked him, you know, they really liked listening to him. They liked what he had to say, and he just gave off a good energy. So he's going through Siberia and he's doing all these different things, right? And so he gets this reputation of healing, like healing of spiritual crisis and any kind of anxieties that you have. If you have issues with that, he can help you with that 100%. He was the man to go to if you had any kind of spiritual question, he was always open to whoever and whenever. Even though there were tons of rumors flying around about this man having relations with his little groupies or whatever that follow him around, he still made it a really good impression on some favorable people, some favorable church leaders. You know, they saw him. You know, they're like, I see you, bro. I see you trying to do stuff, and that's awesome. And so he, on letter of recommendation from one of these little top church leaders, he travels to St. Petersburg. Now, St. Petersburg is the second largest city in Russia, next to Moscow, obviously, at least during this time. And so, upon his arrival, he goes, and he was introduced to the Archimandrite Theophan, who was well connected to other church leaders. So this is a good guy to know. And he needed to know this guy. They were well connected to the society that was in St. Petersburg at the time. Very well connected. And he would later become, this Theophan guy would later become the confessor for the imperial family, for the Tsar and his family. He would be their personal confessor type thing. And so he was definitely in with the royals. And this was something that Rasputin was kind of, we don't know if he was really looking to be with the nobles, but he ended up getting an introduction. Because the Theophan guy was so impressed with Rasputin that he invited him to stay in his home while he was in St. Petersburg. Okay? And so he goes on to be one of Rasputin's most important friends because it helps him gain entrance into influential gatherings and salons and you know, and things like that. And so this is where he would meet and attract influential followers who eventually turn against him. These people, these guys, yeah, they would eventually turn against Rasputin, as we all know. And I'm going to give you the deets on that too, because it is buck wild. But so the religious movement during this time, and I know we've talked about this before, was spiritualism. People were really starting to kind of dig the occult and like mediumship and all these other kind of things. And so when this man came along with a strange demeanor, a strange spirituality, he wasn't really a Christian, but he was, but not really. You know, he just kind of had his own views on life and shared that with people. And some people had an issue with that, surprisingly. And so the spiritualism and stuff was so popular among the aristocracy before Rasputin's arrival, period. So many of the aristocrats were already invested in the occult and the supernatural. They were already going to like seances and things of that matter. You know, I mean, they were into it, you know. People liked the fact that Rasputin was Russian because in St. Petersburg, everybody was Russian. And it seemed like the majority of their religious leaders they had at the time were not fully Russian. And so people embraced Rasputin not only for his different kind of spiritual ways, because, you know, people were looking at different ways to be spiritual. It wasn't just about being a Christian anymore. You can still be spiritual and not have religion. You know what I mean? So Rasputin stays in St. Petersburg just for a few months, you know, just kind of long enough to make an impression. And then he goes home. Like I say, every once in a while he goes home because he wants to see his family. He's not this kind of guy that people are portraying him as, but it is what it is. In 1905, he goes back to St. Petersburg because he's formed many friendships with several of the members of the aristocracy up there, okay? Including all the black princesses, which were these, the black princesses were these, they married the cousins of the Tsar Nicholas II. And so they were the ones to introduce Rasputin to the Tsar and his family. And this is Nicholas II that we're talking about. And so now we've got him being introduced to the royal family, okay? And so what ends up turning into, it was going to be like a 5-minute, hey, how are you doing? Sorry, my dog's sneezing. It was going to be like a, hey, how you doing? Oh, Pan, come on. So he formed many relationships and friendships with members of the aristocracy, including these black princesses, okay? And they had married the cousins of the Tsar, okay? Nicholas II, who's the leader of Russia at this time. Okay, so this gives him the invite. This gets his foot in the door to where he gets to meet the royal family, okay? And so he was only supposed to meet with the Tsar for about 5 minutes, but what 5 minutes turns into an hour of them having conversation about religion and theology and all this other kind of awesome stuff. The Tsar actually said, quote unquote, made the acquaintance of a man of God, Grigori from Tolsbuk province. So the king was very much so impressed with Rasputin, okay? And so it's not too long before Rasputin meets the entire family. Yeah, he gets to meet the entire royal family, including the children and the wife and all that fun stuff, okay? And the wife really takes a liking to him, Alexandria. She really likes him. She thinks he's a really good dude, you know, but after he meets with the Tsar, Nicholas, he goes home again for a little while, okay, after their first meeting. Then he returned to St. Petersburg in July of 1906. And when he went back, he sent a message to the Tsar saying, I got a present for you. Can I bring it to you? You know? And it was like some kind of icon of Saint Simeon, okay? And so they met up so he could give him this gift, and this time he had the family with him, and so he got to meet the family. And at this time they only had one child, who was Alexei, okay? Now Alexei had an issue. He had hemophilia, you know, where your blood is really thin, you bruise really easily. You know, a simple cut could lead you to bleed to death, okay? And so this poor kid would get bruises and stuff like that all the time. And whenever he would get these bruises, he'd be in a lot of pain. And they had all the doctors doing all these things, you know, trying to help heal him. And they were just like, they didn't know what to do. And so the royal family called Rasputin, and they're like, hey, do you mind praying for our son? Because right now he's in a really bad way. And every time that Rasputin would pray for their son, he would, you know, start to show signs of improvement, which is awesome, right? And so, but then something really bad happens. The bad thing that happens is the kid gets a really bad hematoma, like a really serious bruise. Like this bruise is so bad that it gives him fevers and it gives him all these terrible things. And so they get in touch with Rasputin, and they're like, please, you have to come to him. You have to come and pray over him. You're the only person that can do anything. So he writes them back and says, dismiss all the doctors. Keep that in mind. Dismiss all the doctors out of there. Let him rest, and we'll see how he does through the night. So the next morning, he's not much better. But then the next day, the bleeding actually finally stopped, which surprised everybody. Everybody's like, oh my God, the bleeding stopped. You know, even the doctors didn't understand, how did this bleeding stop within this child? He was on the verge of death. This child was going to die, but yet somehow, all of a sudden, he's not bleeding anymore, and he's getting better, okay? And so, but there's a thing about this, and nobody realizes it literally until like 50 years later. So what they didn't know at the time, okay, because the doctors were just doing what they thought was best, and they were giving Alexei aspirin for the pain, right? Because the kid had fevers, he was in pain, and at the time that's what you do. So it wasn't until the 1950s that people figured out that aspirin is a blood thinner. So when the doctors left Alexei alone, that's the reason why he got better, because they stopped giving him the aspirin, and his blood thickened back up, and then that stopped the bleeding. So as much as we all want Rasputin to have prayed over this kid and have cured him, that's really not what happened, unfortunately. Yeah, it was because they were giving the kid aspirin, and as we know, you take aspirin like as a blood thinner. It thins your blood, okay? So a hemophiliac shouldn't be taking no blood thinners, you feel me? So you can imagine that this is going to have this is going to have something. The kids really like Rasputin after this, okay? Because obviously they go on to have more children, and Rasputin is around for a while. He actually goes to visit the kids in their nursery, and they would be in their dressing gowns and things like that, and he would just kind of go in there and pray with them. And and the first time he ever actually went in there, he went in there with Nicholas, the Tsar. And so he thought, hey, this is cool. I'm allowed to come in here and hang out with the kids, Because you got to think, he had 3 kids, but 2 passed, and he only had 1. And he was out of town a lot. He was gone all the time. So he didn't get to see his kid that much. And so after he felt that he helped heal Alexei, he got really close to the rest of the family, okay? They had daughters, they had sons, they had all this stuff. Well, some of the governesses in the house did not really like the fact that a man was going into the nursery when the girls were getting ready to go to sleep and supposedly caressing them and touching them and all this other kind of stuff, which we don't know if that's actually true or not, okay? And so even when he was out of town, he would send the kids like letters and stuff, like encouraging them to love nature and to love God and all this other stuff. But this governess, for some reason, took this as, this is a bad thing. Like, this man should not be in here. He should not be as close to these kids as he is. There was a lot of people that did not have a good attitude when it came to Rasputin. They just didn't like him. They thought he was a charlatan. They thought he was a fake, a phony. And I don't think he was a fake or a phony. He definitely didn't heal with prayer, as I just told you guys. But don't worry, we're not done. So Nicholas is like, all right, bro, we can't go and see the kids anymore. The women are having a freak out attack, which I kind of agree. I wouldn't want a man in my child's bedroom while she's getting ready for bed. That is just kind of strange, even though in the royal's eyes, it was, he was a man of, spirituality. He was a man of religion. And so to them, he was safe. You know what I mean? But the governesses didn't see it that way, okay? Another governess actually said, that was in the nursery, I guess they had several, said that Rasputin had R-worded her, yes, but the queen did not believe her, no, which I find distressing, in my personal opinion. Why wouldn't you believe that? I don't think anybody, but hey, it is what it is. She didn't believe her. They investigated the girl, and they ended up finding her in somebody else's bed. So yes, she was kind of making things up to try to make Rasputin look bad. They were trying to get rid of him because the other governess had already been fired. He told him, you can't really go in there, but he still fired the other governess for acting the way she did, And then we have this other governess who's now claiming that Rasputin has R-worded her, and the queen doesn't believe it, does an investigation, and finds this chick in the bed of some other guy. So evidently, I guess in her eyes, that makes the chick not reliable, because evidently she just sleeps with everybody. I mean, I'm just saying that's probably what the queen was thinking. Now, with the governess going around and telling everybody all these things, rumors start circulating, and they're bad. Rumors that Rasputin had seduced the queen and also the 4 grand duchesses. But Rasputin, he released some letters that was written to him by Alexandria and the grand duchesses. And this really made society mad, because I don't know what these letters said. I don't know if they were like, kind of playful or whatnot, you know what I mean? I'm not really sure, but evidently it made them look bad, and it pissed off a lot of people that Rasputin would release something that would make the royal family look bad. You see what I'm saying? Even if it's true, you know, you're not supposed to really be like showing that out to everybody. You feel me? Like, especially with the royal family, you kind of keep that in the fam type deal, you know. And he didn't do that, and this pissed off even more people, because this is the royal family, okay? You know, you don't make a fool of the royal family like he did. Soon, these little pornographic cartoons start popping up of Rasputin and Alexandria, you know, the queen and all this stuff. And so Nicholas was like, hey, Rasputin, man, you think you could just kind of bounce out for a little while, you know? So Rasputin's like, yeah, sure, man. I'm going on a pilgrimage. I'm going to Palestine. Peace out. Even despite the scandal and the rumors, the family still had this man's back. They still had Rasputin's back, okay? Because obviously the queen knows that she probably didn't do nothing with the man. And the king knows his wife wouldn't do that, blah, 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 blah. Now, what happens, he gets an assassination attempt. Yeah. His very first assassination attempt on Rasputin. And it was a woman who was kind of out of her mind a little bit. And I hate to say that, but she comes out and she stabs him, okay? July 12th, 1914, 33-year-old peasant woman attempted to assassinate Rasputin, okay? By stabbing him in the stomach. He would survive after losing a lot of blood. Oh my gosh. He lost a lot of blood and he stayed in the hospital for a really long time. Yeah. And so he was not doing too good, but then, you know, he got better and he got better and he got better, and, you know, and that was great. Well, she wasn't the only one that was pissed off at this guy for supposedly embarrassing the royal family, you know. So she claimed that she acted alone in that assassination attempt. She said that, no, that was just me. She believed he was a false prophet. She said that he's a false prophet, he's an antichrist, and they ended up taking her to court, and they found her not guilty by reason of insanity. Yes. So, once Rasputin is all better and all well, he decides to go back out and start doing his thing. Only a group of nobles don't like it. No, they're like, this guy is, they don't like his influence that he has over the royal family. They're jealous. And so what do they decide to do? They decide to come up with a plan to kill Rasputin, okay? And they start thinking up plans during December of, let's see, 1916, okay? They start looking up stuff, you know, they start deciding what they're going to do. And so he was actually murdered on December 17th, okay? And this is how he was murdered, supposedly. I'll tell you the truth here in just a bit. He was invited to the Prince's palace after midnight, and he was taken to the basement, okay? Where him and these noble guys, like 2 or 3 noble guys, all sat around and they feasted and everything, and they poisoned these cakes and these drinks with cyanide, supposedly. And so Rasputin's eating the cakes and he's drinking the wine and stuff like that, and nothing's happening. He's not having any kind of reaction, like, whatsoever. So one of the guys, Yusuf, is like, I don't know what's happening. This is really weird. He goes upstairs. He excuses himself from Rasputin. He's like, hey, I gotta go and use a bathroom or something. Goes upstairs, takes a pistol from this other guy that's there, and he returns to the basement. And then he told Rasputin to turn around and face a cross or a crucifix that was on the wall. And then he shot him in the chest. Now, you think, okay, he's done. He's not done. No, he's not done. He is not dead yet. No. So, co-conspirators, they tried to make it look like Rasputin went home that night by taking off his clothes and having one of them dress up as him and go home to his house. You know, they put on whatever he wore, his cloak and stuff like that, and they went to his house or wherever he was staying, and they made it look like that he went home. And then they decided to go ahead and start doing some other stuff to him. So once these dudes go and act like they're him and drop his stuff off, they go back to the house and they go down into the basement to go see, you know, what the deal is with Rasputin, see if he's dead or not. And so he's just kind of laying there, and they're like, well, you know, he looks like he's dead. And so they walk over to him. He jumps up and he tries to attack Yusuf. Yes, he's not dead. No. He jumps up and he tries to attack him. And so they fight him off, and they end up shooting him again. Okay. Yusuf ended up running away. But like I say, Rasputin was shot again by another guy, another co-conspirator. Okay. And this time he was shot in the head. And they say that he was still alive even after that. Then after he died, they basically wrapped him up. Well, they tried to say that they wrapped him up and he was still alive after he'd been shot in the head. But come on, give me a break. The man was not still alive after being shot in the head. No, was not at all. And so they wrapped him up. They took him to this bridge, the Petrovsky. I'm sorry, guys. I know that I can't say words. I get that. Petrovsky Bridge. Got it. That's where they dropped him into the Little Nevka River. All right. Now, so what in all that is real and what in all that is fake, you ask? Well, I'm going to tell you. First off, the body showed severe signs of like really bad trauma. Terrible trauma. They had evidently beat him up. Okay, we didn't hear about that. There was actually 3 gunshot wounds. So he was shot 3 times, and then one that went through the head. That was the actual shot that killed him. Okay. The bullet, they couldn't figure out whose it was because it was an untraceable bullet. It was a bullet that everybody used during the time. They didn't have a way to trace it then. And so there was also a slice wound on his left side, which they think was done post-mortem. There's no evidence in his body that he had been poisoned. None. Because you know how we talked about like the discoloration of the intestines and things like that, and like certain ways that you act when you are poisoned. They found no poison in his system. They also found no water in his lungs, so he was not alive when they dumped him off the bridge into the frozen water below. So, and also there is the woman that say that that Rasputin R-worded her. Okay. They say that she went and cut his bits off and kept them in a jar. That is not true. He had all of his bits when he died. They buried him on January 2nd, and the funeral was only attended by the royals, the royal family. Yeah. The royal family is the only ones. They didn't invite his wife or his kids. And then they buried him in this spot where they were going to build a church, okay? But something happens before then. The Russian royal party ends up getting overthrown, like after Rasputin dies, okay? They get overthrown, and because of this, the people that they were fighting dug up Rasputin's remains and set them on fire, so that would not be like a communing place for the Russians to come commune and stuff like that. They didn't want that. So they dug this man up and desecrated his remains just because they didn't want people to rally right there, basically, against the regime that had come into Russia. So the life and the death of Rasputin is mixed with rumors and lies, and especially about the way he dies. That is not true. He was shrouded in mythology, okay? He was not a sexual deviant like they said he was. He was not a like politician. They said he was trying to sabotage stuff like politically, and that's not really him. That's just not what he did, you know. And so he really was just a person that wanted to help other people heal, and to be able to help the royal family in that way, I'm sure made him incredibly proud, because during that time, it did look like he was cured by the power of prayer to everybody else around him, including the doctors. They were like, I mean, this had to be it. It wasn't until the 1950s that they found out that the aspirin they were giving the kid was what was actually killing him. It was thinning his blood, already too thin blood. You know what I mean? So the guy comes and he prays and he does his thing, and everybody thinks that, you know, this man is a charlatan, that it's fake, that there's no way that he is a real healer and all this other stuff. And it's sad that these guys that were jealous of his relationship that he had with the royal family, they were so jealous of him that they had to do all these horrible things to him. When in actuality, they just shot, I think they beat him up and they shot him and then they threw him into the river. They didn't poison him. He didn't come back to life after being shot like twice. No, he did not. They meticulously planned this man's murder. And then on top of that, after the Russians are overthrown from their government, because Nicholas was the last czar in Russia, after they're overthrown, they go to Rasputin's grave and dig up his remains and burn them. Just because they don't want people to have that moment, that place of spirituality, that place of knowing that there was a spiritual man here. You know, there was he was a nomad, and he traveled and he spoke with conviction, and he had a lot of female followers. But that doesn't mean he was doing anything with his female followers. You know what I mean? I thought this story was so interesting. I found out so much more than I thought I knew about this guy, and I had to share it with you guys because he is like, you know, a mystic, you know, and everybody was totally obsessed with spiritualism during this time. And so he fit right in, and I think he got lucky by telling the doctors to leave the kid alone, let him rest, just stop touching him, stop bothering him. And then he got lucky. That was actually the cure, was for the doctors to stop giving him aspirin because it was killing the kid. And so for him to go on and have, you know, these really good relationships with the royal children, I think is pretty amazing, in my opinion. And for, you know, maybe not going into their room at night when they're, you know, getting ready to go to bed. That's not the greatest idea to do that. But I don't think he did anything, any kind of harm. As you could see, I've been putting pictures up, but yeah, so that is the story of Grigori Rasputin, and I hope you guys enjoyed it today. I know this is kind of a long video, but yeah, it was a lot of information, and I feel really bad about how everything went down for him. You know, I mean, his wife didn't even get to go to his own funeral. You know, it was just the royals, so like gate kept this man, kind of. You know, they put everything into him, and the other church leaders were not down. They were not down, and so that's why what happened. So, anyways, that's our story for today, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope that you decide to subscribe so that you can see whenever I put up another video. So, but anyway, if nobody's told you today, I love you. So have a great week.